Okay, hi, so welcome to this video where we're going to be speaking about cancer. Now, of course, cancer is not a very happy topic, but you need to be able to understand what cancer is and the basic science of how cancer works. Alright, so we hear about cancer all the time, but what really is cancer? Well, cancer is the uncontrolled growth and division of cells. Okay? Sounds very simple, and actually it is, right? It's the uncontrolled growth and division of cells, okay, which results obviously in the formation of tumours. Okay, so this leads to the formation of tumours. Right. So that's obviously a bad thing. What a tumour is a massive group of unspecialised cells. Okay, so tumours are masses of unspecialized cells which are constantly dividing. Okay, so if you have a load of cells and those cells become cancerous, right? Let's first of all mention that cells naturally and normally are not cancerous, right? Obviously our cells generally are not cancerous, but something can trigger a non-cancerous cell to become cancerous, and we're going to go on to that in a second. But basically, if those cells actually become cancerous, they start to grow and divide more than they really should, and so then you get a build-up of cells in one mass, right, in one location to start with, that is, and that is called a tumour, right? So the tumour is the mass of unspecialised cells, and they're constantly dividing. Now, importantly, I've said that they're unspecialised, right? Whereas most of our cells are specialised. So when a cell becomes cancerous, it basically stops doing its job properly because it's constantly dividing and growing, right? So whereas before it might have been a skin cell, right? If that turns into skin cancer, then that skin cell is not doing its normal job anymore. Instead, it's going to be growing and dividing constantly, and therefore we call it an unspecialised cell. Alright, so let's have a look at a diagram which can show us the difference between two separate types of tumour. Okay, the first one being a benign tumour, right? You probably will have heard these terms before, benign and malignant. So benign is normally associated with being less harmful, right? And a benign tumour is a tumour which can grow in one location until there's no more room for it to grow. Right, the tumour normally stays inside a single place, right, and that's because there's a barrier around it. Okay, so the tumour grows in one location until it runs out of room. Okay, it may be surrounded by a barrier or a membrane which stops it from growing further. Alright, and so here in my really artistic diagram, I have a group of cells, right? Now, if this carried on growing, I could draw another cell, right? It's dividing and we're getting more and more cells growing. But let's say, for example, that this is surrounded by some kind of membrane, like this. Okay, notice that now there's no room for those cells to grow further outwards, right? They can't grow out here because that membrane's in the way. And so basically they continue to grow in one location, but they're not spreading to other locations. And that is actually the hallmark of some other types of cancer. Okay, and so in general, these tumours are usually less dangerous and they are not cancerous, right? So even though we have a tumour growing because of cancer cells, what we're saying is that the person may have a single tumour, or they could have, a single growth in one place, but that does not mean that that cancer is going to spread, and so we don't call that tumour cancerous, right? Alright, now I'm going to edit this diagram slightly, so bear with me. Now, what if these cells were growing and growing and growing until this membrane on the outside burst, right? So you see this gap here. Let's just say that is a result of it bursting. And on the other side of that membrane, or that barrier, we have other cells, or maybe we have the bloodstream, right? Okay, so let's say that these cells continue to grow, okay, the cancerous cells or the tumour cells continue to grow and divide, but some of them end up leaving that membrane, okay? They end up crossing that barrier and end up either in another tissue, right, with other cells, or even in the bloodstream. Okay, well, if you think about what's happening to the bloodstream, the blood is actually moving somewhere, right? It might be to the left, and it's going to be taken somewhere else in the body. Okay, somewhere else in the body, and let's say that somewhere else is, I don't know, the lungs. Okay, and you've got a load of cells in the lungs. Let's draw them in green, right? They're not green, but whatever. Let's say you've got these cells in the lungs, blah, blah, blah. And these tumour cells arrive in the bloodstream, break through the barrier of the bloodstream, and end up in the lungs, right? Now what's going to happen? Well, these tumour cells are going to start dividing, okay, and continually dividing. And notice that now you're having a build-up or a mass of cells in another location. Okay, so basically what we're saying is that this tumour has spread to other parts of the body, right? And this is the kind of tumour that we call malignant, right? This is malignant. Now, a malignant tumour is one which is able to spread to other parts of the body, okay? So the tumour can spread to other parts of the body. The cells invade healthy tissues and sometimes travel in the bloodstream. Okay, there we go. This results in more tumours forming, and we say they are cancerous. Okay, so, oh, there we go. So we say that those tumours are cancerous. Let me just move that so I've got a little bit more room. Now, if you have those tumours, first of all, bear in mind a benign tumour can still be dangerous, right? I said that most of the time they're not, but they still can be. For example, let's say you had a benign tumour in your brain, right, and it started taking up the room which some of your brain cells need. That's going to start putting pressure on your brain, and so that can be a very nasty thing indeed. Yeah, a brain tumour, even if benign, can cause massive problems. But let's say you have malignant tumours which are spreading all over your body. Well, they're invading different areas of cells and growing, and they're basically taking away nutrients from cells that need them. So let's say in the lungs here, right, all these lung cells, they might be helping to allow oxygen to get into the blood and stuff like that, and they need to grow and divide in order to maintain their shape. You've studied the alveoli already. Maybe they're the cells in the wall of the alveoli, etc. But if you have tumours, then those tumours are going to be blocking those cells from doing their actual job, and they're also going to be taking resources, so nutrients, oxygen, glucose, etc., that those cells need, and that's going to cause damage to that area. And if that's happening to multiple different areas, then you're going to be having severe problems, right? So these are usually more dangerous and can be fatal as areas are being deprived of nutrients by the tumours. Okay, so obviously very nasty, and that is why malignant tumours are normally a lot worse than benign tumours, and the malignant ones are the ones that we call cancerous, whereas benign usually are okay, but can still be damaging. Okay, so that's basically what cancer is, and that's what tumours are. Let's have a look at how we get it. And so there are things called risk factors, right? So the first thing to note is that anyone can develop cancer, and it is a random process. Okay, so basically your cells can just become cancerous on their own without anything actually happening to them externally. What's really happening here, and you don't need to go into detail about this, is the DNA is mutating, right? That is a random process. DNA can mutate on its own, and so you don't actually need anything to trigger cancer. Cancer can just occur itself. However, there are known risk factors, okay, which increase your chance of developing cancer. Okay, so risk factors can increase the chances of an individual developing cancer. Right, now you will know most of these risk factors. First one I'm going to mention is smoking. Okay, smoking has been heavily associated with lung cancer. Okay, so smoking increases chance of lung cancer as chemicals in the smoke can harm cells and turn them cancerous. Okay, now it's not only the lungs. The lungs are obviously the main one because you've got direct contact with the chemicals in the smoke because you're breathing it in. But on the way down to your lungs, you've got your windpipe, so you get throat cancer as well. And there are all types of other cancers which have been associated with smoking. Okay, so other types of cancer can also be caused by smoking. Okay, that's my bad spelling, or bad typing even. Caused, okay. Alright, so smoking is one. Another one is obesity. Okay, obesity. So obesity has been linked to many different cancers as well, mainly being bowel cancer, liver cancer, kidney cancer, and stuff like that, right? So things to do with the digestive system. Okay, so obesity increases the risk of cancers such as bowel, liver, kidney, etc. Right? Now, if you think both of those, smoking and obesity, are both avoidable risks, right? So if you don't smoke, then you're not increasing your chance of cancer, whereas if you smoke, then you are. If you make sure that you live a healthy lifestyle and you don't become obese, then you are reducing your chance of things like bowel cancer as well, because obesity can increase the chance of those cancers. All right, another one is UV. Okay, so that's UV, which is ultraviolet radiation. Okay, UV stands for ultraviolet. Now we get doses of ultraviolet from direct sunlight, right? The sun gives out UV, and so sunny areas, right? Sunny areas and tanning without sun cream increases chance of developing skin cancers. Okay, obviously if you go on a tanning bed, then what you're doing is you're dosing your skin with ultraviolet radiation. Ultraviolet radiation can cause cancer, right? It is a risk factor associated with cancer, and so if you do tan on a sunbed, then that is increasing a chance of cancer. All right, now there are also other things which increase your risk of cancer, which are actually living things. Okay, so things like viruses. Okay, so viruses can infect humans and increase risk of cancer. For example, HPV, okay, HPV, which stands for human papillomavirus. Okay, this heavily increases chances of cervical cancer in females, right? A very high percentage of cervical cancer patients actually have been infected by the HPV virus, right? So there are living things which can cause cancers or heavily increase the chances of developing cancers. Okay, and lastly, we have, let me scroll down, genetics. Okay. Even though we have all these things which can cause cancer or increase the chances of cancer, also our genetics actually can make us more or less susceptible to cancers, right? So some genes, or in some inherited genes, can increase or decrease the chances of us developing cancer, right? So for example, e.g. the BRCA gene, okay, which is just inherited but affects women, okay, increases the chances that a woman could develop ovarian cancers or breast cancer. Okay, so you have a gene, the BRCA gene, right? People pronounce it the BRCA gene. Okay, which actually, if you're a female and you inherit that gene, then it increases your chances of developing those two kinds of cancer, right? Which is obviously a bad thing. And so now we do have genetic screens for that gene, but it's just one of the risk factors which increases the chances of developing cancer. All right, and so I'm going to stop there. There are obviously your risk factors, right? You've got 5 separate risk factors there. There are more, okay? But I'm not going to go into all of those because you could spend an hour going into all of those. But I hope that's helped and you understand what cancer is. I hope you understand as well that cancer is not one disease. And this is the problem as well. A lot of the time when people say, oh, is there a cure for cancer? Well, cancer is very different depending on where it's affecting. All that's happening is your cells are growing uncontrollably, right, and dividing uncontrollably. But if that happens in different parts of the body, then it causes very different things. And so you have very many different types of cancer, which is why treating cancer is a very difficult thing to do. Okay, but I'm going to stop there, of course. If you still have any questions on that, feel free to post them in the comment box below or send me a direct email and I'll get back to you. But as usual, please like and subscribe because it really does help me out. But I look forward to seeing you in the next one.